When you think of Christmas movies, what's the first face that pops into your head? For millions of us, it's him, Macaulay Culkin, the kid from Home Alone. But behind that famous screaming face is a story that is definitely not a comedy. It's a story about a childhood that was basically stolen by fame, a fortune that was built on exploitation, and a fight for survival against the very people who were supposed to protect him. I mean, just look at this. On the left, you've got the global superstar, the kid everyone loved, the highest paid child actor in history. And on the right, well, that's a photo that came out back in 2012. It sparked this huge media storm with everyone whispering about a tragic downfall. The difference is just, wow, it's jarring. And it makes you wonder, how in the world did the kid from Home Alone become this haunted-looking figure? So what happened? The answer isn't some simple story about Hollywood parties and too much money. No, it's way darker than that. It's really a story about a father's greed and a son's desperate, long fight for his own freedom. And to really get how Macaulay Culkin managed to reclaim his life, we have to go right back to the beginning, to a family living right on the edge. To really understand Macaulay's story, you first have to understand his father, a man named Kit Culkin. Kit was an actor himself, a failed one, and he basically saw his son as a second chance, a do-over to get the fame that he never could. So Macaulay's career, it wasn't born from a dream. It was a solution to his father's ambition. And when I say desperation, I really mean it. The Culkin family's life was a million miles away from Hollywood glamour. Kit moved his entire family, that's 9 people, into this tiny New York apartment where the kids were all crammed into a single room. They were so poor that young Macaulay would have to literally dig for loose change under theater seats just to get enough money to get home after a performance. That kind of poverty, that's what fueled his father's relentless push for success, no matter the cost. The whole thing changed when a neighbor, who happened to be a theater director, needed a child actor. She asked Kit, and without even thinking about it, he volunteered his 6-year-old son. Macaulay was never asked if he wanted to be an actor. He was just thrown into the spotlight to live out the dream his father couldn't. And right from that moment, his childhood really wasn't his own anymore. Macaulay's rise to fame wasn't just fast, it was meteoric. It was an explosion. But for every single dollar he earned, it felt like a piece of his childhood was being carved away. The price of fame wasn't just about losing his privacy, it was about losing himself, as his father's grip just got tighter and tighter. Do you remember the first time you saw Home Alone? That movie was a massive cultural event. It made over $476 million all over the world. Practically overnight, Macaulay Culkin became the most famous kid on the entire planet. But behind the scenes, that incredible fame was quickly turning into a golden cage. The money was just mind-blowing. At his peak, Macaulay was pulling in $8 million a movie, a sum that made him, by far, the highest-paid child actor in history. His parents quit their jobs, and suddenly the weight of supporting his entire family fell onto the shoulders of a kid who could barely read his own scripts. But as all that money poured in, the love and support he actually needed were replaced by something way, way darker. This quote. This is from an interview Macaulay gave years later, and it just reveals the heartbreaking truth of his childhood. His relationship with his dad wasn't about love, it was pure business. He was an asset to be managed, a product to be sold. This isn't just a sad memory, it's proof of the kind of emotional scars that fame and fortune can leave on a little kid. And Kit's control, it was absolute and it was brutal. He used fear and intimidation to try and shape his son into the perfect little moneymaker. The constant pressure, the humiliation, even threats of violence. It was just this relentless psychological abuse that left some really deep, lasting scars. This wasn't just some pushy parent. This was a reign of terror that stripped a young boy of his childhood. By the time he was a teenager, Macaulay had just had enough. He'd spent his entire life working, taking his father's abuse, and living a life that someone else chose for him. So he did something nobody expected. He fought back. He took on the 2 people who controlled his life and his fortune, his own parents, in a legal battle that would change everything. Now, to get how Macaulay actually fought back, you have to understand where the money was. As a child actor, all his earnings went into something called a trust fund, and his parents were the gatekeepers. They had total control over his fortune, and they used it like a weapon to control him. But Macaulay was about to turn their biggest weapon against them. So here's how it went down. His path to freedom was a huge legal and personal fight. In 1995, his parents started this really nasty divorce, and they were fighting over the kids and their money. That was Macaulay's chance. A year later, at just 16, he sued to have both of them removed from his trust fund. And in a huge decision, he won. But it was never just about the money. It was about getting his life back. In 1997, he walked away from it all. Hollywood, the fame, the fortune, to do something he'd never gotten the chance to do. Be a normal teenager. And what about Kit, the father who started this whole thing? Well, the second the money was out of his control, he just disappeared. He abandoned his family, his responsibilities, and the son he used to call his golden goose. His actions proved what Macaulay had known the whole time. It was never, ever about love. It was only about control. And when that control was gone, so was he. But getting free didn't mean he was immediately at peace. The scars from his childhood were deep, and the years that followed were a really painful journey of trying to figure out who he was. He'd escaped his father, sure, but he still had to escape the giant shadow of Kevin McAllister and find the man he was always supposed to be.
The decade after he got his freedom was just marked by one tragedy after another. There was a horrible apartment fire, a very public arrest that made him look like another Hollywood cliché, and then the unimaginable loss of his sister Dakota in a car accident. And through all of it, Macaulay just kept going. He faced all the public judgment, the personal loss, and the constant pressure. It would have been so easy to just give up, to become another sad statistic, but Macaulay chose a different path.
He chose to heal, and he took real, deliberate steps to get his life back. First, he just got away. He moved to Paris to escape the press and just be anonymous for a while. Then he built a family. He found a partner in Brenda Song, another former child actor who actually understood what he'd been through. And finally, he started reclaiming his own story, choosing his own projects and talking openly about what he'd experienced. He was no longer a victim of his past. He was building his own future. Then, in 2023, Macaulay Culkin got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. But in his speech, he didn't thank the industry or the producers. He thanked the family that made him feel whole again. His words to his wife, Brenda Song, were this incredible testament to the power of love and a beautiful end to a journey that took him from the highest highs to the lowest lows. He finally got his happy ending, not on a movie set, but right there with his family. Macaulay Culkin's story has a happy ending, thank goodness, but it's also a powerful warning. It forces all of us to ask a really tough question. When a kid becomes a product, a commodity, whose job is it to protect them? As we keep watching and celebrating young actors, we all have a responsibility to make sure their childhoods aren't the price we pay for our entertainment. What do you think?